And we're live. Hey. And we're live. Hey. Okay, I got to kill the audio on this. And somebody let me know. I assume that since I'm hearing myself, I can be heard. All right. Now I'm down to watching my lips move. And get the camera angle adjusted. Things are a little different from the two different platforms we're using. Greetings, Dr. Quinn, and hello, Mr. Lastman. I'm sorry, still going to be Corporal, you know it. I've got two audio streams. I do not think I have two audio streams anymore, but I certainly did. Excuse me. Okay, let me shuffle this over here. Shuffle this here. Sorry, we're doing a little bit of new configuration for this particular event and just making some last minute adjustments and changes. Stand by. And that'll give everybody a moment or two to come on in. There we go. Okay, looking good, sounding good. So welcome. We are doing a special AMA today. It's Thursday. This is not Mike's usual Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And of course, hopefully everybody's heard the word of it. That's why you're all here. This is the Pi AMA, the Raspberry Pi special. And what we're going to do in here today is talk about Raspberry Pis, how they can be used. Okay, it's not an AMA, it's a Q&A. Somebody, after I did the last solo one, suggested that if I ever did my own AMA, not ask Mike anything, but ask me anything, that I might name it the Dave Rush Ask Me Anything or Drama. And I just love that one, but my cohorts here don't love it quite as much, so we're not drama. We're doing Q&A today. So let's kind of set it up. We're here because we're all stuck at home, have to work from home, and there's a lot of cool things that we can do. Everybody at our company, Total Seminars, works very hard from home whenever possible, and on those unfortunate and rare occasions, some of us will go into the office and do a little bit of work there. I spent the good day of yesterday working there, just picking up some supplies that I needed for today and things like that. But if we're all stuck home from COVID, here's an opportunity for us to explore strange new worlds and new civilizations. And we're going to stick with the old ones as well. If you have the usual type of questions that are related to A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, we'll take those. What I'm going to do is if they're quick, down, and dirty, I'm going to answer them. If they're long, I got a lot of material to get through today, or potentially, depends on what you want to talk about. Then I'll probably ask you to hold that one off and contact Mike. And then the fun part, we click on this thing. If you would like to get in touch with me to talk about this or any other topic, you can do so. The things are really slow on my computer with all these zillions of things running. So let me find the right page here. Not that one, not that one. Goodness gracious. Everything disappears. Oh, well, Scott will put my address up and I'll find it here as we go through. You can find me by email at the company, Dave R, like Dave Rush, but just the R, at totalsem, totalsem.com. And I have no objection if you want to contact my primary personal email. It's drushtx at Yahoo, like Dave Rush, Texas, at yahoo.com. Oh, that is so strange. All right, let's get out of that page because it's just not doing what I want it to do. And I'll get that page up and running as we get things moving. We'll go from there. So let me do a little quick check-in, see who all's here, what everybody's up to and doing, and then we're going to dive into some material. So, oh, I see Pise. Welcome, Pise, and Rob, and of course, Tolowit, first one in. We can always count on you. Somebody beat you in the other day. We were kind of discussing it on the background channel, and we were all shocked. Hello, Greg Davis. Nice to see you. Dr. Quinn, I worship you, and I love that name. Half of me says, yeah, you really are Dr. Quinn, and of course, the great television reference. Now, I didn't have a second mic on, Corporal, but it's all fixed now. But we had two sound channels running, and they were a few seconds apart. Greetings, Brandon. Got your LinkedIn request, and we are now linked. Hi, Nigel. Wow, this thing makes it all the way to England. That's incredible. Russ Scott is here, posted my stuff, and he's got me both. Okay, very good. I'm going to try this one more time because this is going to be sort of a necessary tool over the course of this activity. I see half of what's going on here. I've got a whole bunch of cables that's, apologies for the camera shaky here, but I've got to do this. That's not possible. Boy, everything is just poorly organized here. All right, I got the right pages here. We do that, contact information, and then we share it. Go to Uncle Zoom. Oh, I didn't think I did. Okay, I'll get those. I know I didn't. Okay, I got that, Scott. Thank you. We hit Uncle share screen, and there it is. Hey. All right. So there's the contact info. I never mentioned this in the past, but since Mike always does, I'll add mine as well. My Steam name, and I'm not on Steam much at all these days, goodness gracious. I so want to be. I only play about 2 or 3 games, but when I'm on there, you'll find me on old Battlefield. I love older Battlefield. And yeah, brain fart. It'll come to me. Again, it's been so long since I've been on, but you'll find me as Blood Rush, and sometimes the name changes to Blood Rush TX, but I think that's fairly new. Borderlands, thank you. Man, I'm just so behind. Okay, make that go away. Make that shrink. Oh, I see why that happened. Okay, we learned something new. So I missed a couple. Andre here, Andre de Geert, thank you. And I thought I said hi to Robert Frederick, but I missed that, so off we go. Okay, well, throw out your questions, pie-oriented questions, all the way to the Netherlands. Yes, you're my man. Throw out pie questions, throw out A+, throw out whatever, and I'm just going to get started here. I'm going to start just a little bit by talking about things, and then we'll start. Sorry about the nose itch. We just got a big blast of pollen here after a rain bloom last night, and I'm just snorkeling away like an idiot. And I want this document to talk about what to talk about. So Raspberry Pi, the focus here is going to be not a Raspberry Pi class. It's going to, certainly. But what I want to do is help you find ways to integrate this into learning the various certifications from CompTIA. So it's a great tool for A+. It's a really, I think it most shines with Net+. But it also does a very good job on some important objectives in A+, and to a lesser degree, but not minimalist, in Security+. Would like to remind you, as I have been asked, of course, to say sorry, I can't speak today. The specials that we have available during the rest of the week and during Ask Mike Anything, those are available for us today. So we're going to do 50% off of the super bundles. Let me see if I'm smart enough to bring that document up this time. Click that, click AMA super bundles, and then share it. I can do that. See, I use the words here on purpose just so those of you who use this technology, Zoom and things like that, you can follow along what I'm doing. Click that, share that, and hey, there it goes. So the Thursday Q&A special, 50% off of A+, Net+, and Security+ super bundles. That includes the video, the total sims, and the total tester. And that's 50% off, and that's just a knockout deal. And of course, as always, you are the only folks that we advertise this to, so take advantage of that. That 50% off also applies to standalone total tester price. You're prepping for A+. Mike has said it before, I'm not going to beat it to death, but the testing that we do here, first of all, looks, acts, feels, and smells a lot like the CompTIA test. And what's really cool and amazing about it is you can sort of organize how you take your test on a chapter by chapter basis, on an objective by objective basis, timed, untimed, using the same proportion of types of questions from each of the domains of the classes. Really, really flexible. So head over to totalsem.com, use the code MMLive626. That's tomorrow. Mike Myers live in tomorrow's date, but it's good for obviously all the earlier days of this week and for today and tomorrow. Back to business here. Reading. I love when Mike does that. Okay, a couple quickie last questions here. Tolwit, I've never played with a Pi yet. Can you give me a synopsis? Amazing, that is exactly what I'm going to do. And we'll look at it from hobbyists and all kinds of other perspectives. Greetings, Monsieur Sosa. Dave, I have a Pi 4 at home. The question is, the cooling fan important to have on? All right, let's hit that question real quick. No. And that's an opinion. If I go to the Raspberry org forum and you post that same question, you're going to get 50-50. But I can tell you that I have gajillions of Pis, including 4s, and not a single one of them, except the very first one I bought, has fans or fins or anything like that. I got it for the first one just because I assumed I needed it. I didn't. I do have one other one that I've got in a box I'm going to show you in a little while. That came with a fan, but I have never overheated and I have never throttled, and we live in toasty old Houston. Greg's got a Pi 3B setup and a new 4B 4 gig still in the box. You know, if you're not going to take it out of the box, I know a guy who will send you a PayPal, you know, for a little less than what you paid for it. Hoping to set it up, learning station for my granddaughters. It's got value there. The question came up at an AMA yesterday that said, hey, is this good for my grandkids? And of course, it all depends on your usage. But yeah, you can game on the thing. You can certainly learn to code on it. There's kid coding programs on there. 2 Raspberry Pis. Wonder what I can do with them. We'll talk about that. Can you run Kodi on it? You certainly can run Kodi on it. I've done it for years. And just wondering as I get paid next week. Okay, we'll talk about the money too. Oh yeah, Pi 4 is a Plex server. That's overkill. There are people who do it absolutely satisfactory with Pi 2s and certainly Pi 3s. All right, so let's dive into it then here. What is it? A couple of people haven't seen it. A couple of people haven't played with it yet. So we're going to stick one up here in front of the camera. It's a little cheesy, but it's the way it's got to go. Raspberry Pi. Oh, I'm looking on delay. Sorry about that. I'm looking at the wrong screen. I'm pausing indiscriminately. So quite literally the size of a deck of cards. Spin over here. There we go. It's got 4 USB ports. It's got an Ethernet jack. This is an older one. This is a Pi 3B. So there's an audio jack. There's an HDMI connector. This is a USB micro C, and it's only used on this particular model as a power connector. Back here on the bottom, little slot for a micro SD card. Over here on this side, see all these pins, it's called a header. These are called the general purpose IO pins. There's 40 of them, and there's about 25 of them that can be used to send signals out, receive signals in. They can be switched in function. So if you want to hook up things to it, it's a really cool expansion thing. Buried back here, there's one. Can't see it real well, but a very thin camera connector. I'll show you that camera in a little while. And then there's another similar looking connector on this guy right here that's designed for testing of the unit. It's not something that the nice folks at Raspberry Pi provide for us. It's something that they use, and I've never seen anybody mess with this thing. So this is made by a group in England called the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and they have a goal, a mission. They're a charitable outfit to bring computing to everyone in the world, irrespective of budget. Now, they're not giving a ton of them away free. I think that's probably not true. They probably give them away to their target underfunded areas, and they do that by selling these to hobbyists and everybody else. They're always 35 bucks. At least they have been from the beginning. So the very first one that had a simple processor and 256 megs of RAM was 35 bucks. And then it got better and 35 bucks and better and 35 bucks and so on. Now they even make a couple of little super tiny ones I'll pull out in a bit, that are 13 bucks. And their newest, latest, and greatest one, the Pi 4 with 8 gigs, that one's real high on the scale. It's 75 bucks. The current general model is the Raspberry Pi 4 or 4B, and there's 3 models of them. And this is really interesting the way they're doing pricing. I expect as a result, we're going to see one of them go away. But there's a 1 gigabyte of RAM version, there's 2 gigs, and there's 4 gigs. And the lower ones are 35 bucks. And the 4 gig is now gone to 45 bucks. So cough that extra 10 bucks, get the big banana. It's the way to go. Reading. So now, yeah, take a look at the pictures, Google them. And great sources of help. Of course, the Raspberry Pi Foundation, raspberrypi.org. Go over there, check out the forums, check out the products. They've got some other things. They've got cameras and cases and power supplies and things like that. We'll dive all into that. I want to look a gift horse in the mouth. I don't want to. I've got A+, and I'm delighted. I was considering buying Sec Plus next week. Okay, now's the time. Get that super bundle or get the practice test. $100 Australian, unfortunately, but still cheap. Right. So as I guess we're addressing cost, let's talk about things that you need. You got to have a power supply. The current version needs a 3 amp power supply. There's a lot of argument about, can I use my phone charger? Well, probably not today. Most phone chargers today top out at 2.5 amps, 2.4 amps. So this guy fully running needs a solid 3 amps. And the voltage tolerances on them are pretty narrow. Phone chargers often go out of those tolerances and you'll get underpower messages or you could kill it. So get either the official one. I'm not a real big fan of that, but I do have one or two. Or really look up your specs. Find one that will hold between 4.75 and 5.25 volts and 3 amps. So you got to have a power supply. That's it. You can get away with just that. There's a way to take the little micro SD card, plug it in or set it up in advance on a Mac machine or a Windows machine so that you can turn this thing on with a power supply and you will have configured Wi-Fi on it. You can then access the Pi and do everything that you want from it without a mouse or a keyboard or a monitor. You can do it all remotely. But that's not the way most people are going to do it. So the way most people will start out, you got to have a monitor, you got to have a keyboard, you've got to have an HDMI cable, you're going to need a mouse. So those are kind of the minimum things. And you also don't want to take this circuit board and set it down on anything bare, especially something metal. It's going to short out and kill. People make cardboard cases. There's a lot of cheap little plastic cases for $5. So assuming that you've got a monitor with an HDMI connector or an adapter, and everybody's got a keyboard and everybody's got a mouse, you can unplug it from your main computer unless your laptop. You can get into this game for $35 for the Pi, and you know, pick your number here. Up to $100 should be able to take care of everything you need, and probably much less. It's a single board computer, an SBC. Processor on there is an ARM processor. All the modern ones come with 4 cores, and they support 64-bit. They've only just now released their first beta operating system that's 64. 32 does the job for the most part, but everybody's getting really excited about this new 64. It does come with Bluetooth, and it does come with the current model 802.11, I believe AC. All right, covered all of that. Happy junk. Operating systems. So this thing is designed to be a Linux computer. And the big, most popular version of Linux out there, base Linux, is called Debian or Debian, if you like. And the Raspberry Pi Foundation has customized that. They've created a distro of it. And not surprisingly, it's called Raspbian. And that's the stock and trade that everybody uses. But there are a few other ones that you can play with. And here today in our playing, we'll play with Raspbian. There's Arch Linux. There's Ubuntu, most popular version that people play with on PCs and in virtual machines. There's Kali. Some of you have been talking about and playing with pen testing. There is a full-blown version of Kali Linux with all of the Kali utilities on here. That is just the coolest thing, right? So if you're going to do Kali pen testing, and you turn up with this box to do all the pen testing, that just blows some people away, certainly myself included. Did all that. So you got a Pi. What do you want to do with it? Well, you want to make it work to begin with. So there's a couple things that you'll need to download. You're going to need a micro SD card. You can do it with as small as a 4 gig card, and anything on up to 256 gig. I do most of my individual experiments. I just want to try this one particular application. I'll do it with probably an 8 or a 16. If I want to do something that's heavy duty, start looking at the bigger numbers, the 32s, the 64s, and so forth. But whatever you do, you start out with a handy dandy little blank micro SD card, and now you've got to get an operating system on there. So we're going to put Raspbian on probably, and there are 2 ways to get there. One of them is to download the Raspbian image from raspberrypi.org. It's an ISO file. It's not very big. In fact, it's pretty darn small. Or you can use their installation utility called Noobs, and it actually stands for something that I don't recall what, and I'm going to take the mic tack on this one, so I don't care. But Noobs has a full-blown version of Raspbian on it, and it also has a menu that says, here's 3 or 4 or 5 other operating systems that the Raspberry Pi supports, and you can pick from that menu and say, this is the operating system that I want to install today, and it's not on the card or it's not in the image. It's going to reach out onto the internet, so you need an internet connection, and pull it down and install that. So a very cool thing to do. If you mangle your Pi, not hardware, but if you mangle the operating system that's installed and you use Noobs, it's really cool. You power it off, there's no switch, you unplug it, you plug it back in, and then when you plug it back in, you hold down the shift button, and that will bring up the Noobs interface again, and it'll say, what do you want to do? Reinstall Raspbian, reinstall, or install one of these other operating systems. If you mangle the operating system that's just pure Raspbian, you're going to have to start over and get Raspbian on there again. So how you do it, you download either of the ISOs to your Windows, your Mac machine, and then there's a utility. I'm going to bring this utility up in one of the slides in a little bit, called Win32, or it's Win32, right? Let me get the name right here. I have notes. There we go, Win32 Disk Imager. And you use that Win32 Disk Imager, and it will write the image file onto the micro SD card. A couple of steps you got to do, and I'm not going to talk us through all this. You can figure that stuff out pretty easily, and there's a million how-tos out there. So once you've got that image installed on the micro SD card, you slot it. Anything that you plug in or unplug to a Raspberry Pi except for a USB device, power off. Don't do it live. There's a potential for damage, and that damage is almost guaranteed if you try to pop in a micro SD card in the slot while power is applied. So I put in the micro SD card, I plug the thing back in, and it'll start the installation process. It's all self-contained, it's all ready to go. It's going to ask you questions along the way. What's the name of the power account that you want to make? What's your time zone? What kind of keyboard do you use? English, French, German, whatever. You get the idea. And once the installation is complete, along the way, it's even going to do an update, because you never know how long ago it was that an update was generated. I'll warn you through that. All right, let me check notes here, see who's talking and asking. So we can fill anything out. We're looking good here. Nobody's doing much. Will Ubuntu work on the Pi? Yes, there is a version, Andre, of Ubuntu for the Pi. You thought it needed a faster CPU? No, it works beautifully. You would not notice the difference between it and just about anything else. Now, that said, the micro SD cards do make a difference. The old class 10 discussion and things like that is kind of ancient, but if you go out and buy a store brand micro SD card, 32 gigs, and it costs you $6, and you go out and buy a SanDisk Ultra 32 gigs, and it's going to cost you 20 or 25 bucks, it's worth the difference. The local brand name stuff or non-brand, off-brand stuff is really, really, really slow compared to the good high performance stuff. So big deal if you're doing that first initial set of experiments, things will take a little longer. But when you start doing serious things with it, or you start counting on them, you want to start thinking about thank you, Scott, getting a better quality SD card. So Noobs, he looked it up, new out-of-the-box software. Thank you, Scott. Ubuntu versions for Pi 2, 3, 4, Andre. Yes. Whenever Raspberry Pi Foundation comes out with a new machine, they update the operating system. And one of the really cool, amazing knockout things that they do, at least so far they've been able to, is they make it 100% backward compatible with every Pi that they made up until this point. So if I go out and get the latest version of Raspbian, I think 64-bit, it's not going to work on the old Raspberries that were only 32-bit, didn't support 64, but the 32-bit version of that absolutely will. So backward compatible. Now, Ubuntu's and things like that, when the nice folks who come out with a new thing here, it's incumbent on the people who work with Ubuntu distros to make updates so that they'll work on the new card. So those tend to come out a couple of weeks and sometimes a couple of months after the new model comes out. Is it worth it to install an OS to an external SSD and boot up from that? Yes, and I have that answer coming up in a little while. Again, right off the bat is the speed basis. Let's go with that. All right, moving on. Things you should know. You've got a brand new Pi, you've installed it, you haven't changed anything from the defaults. First of all, you can't access it remotely. You have to have done some heavy magic first. So the default account name, you're going to use your keyboard, your mouse, and your monitor, is Pi, just a PI. And the default admin password is Raspberry, R-A-S-P-B-E-R-R-Y, Raspberry, lowercase. Everything in the Linux world is case sensitive. Now you can change those and you're going to get warnings later on if you turn on certain things, and those are still at the default. So let's take a look at a Pi. We'll pretend that this is a fresh installation. I'm going to show you this in two phases. Raspberry Pi has a remote graphical user interface, VNC, and they have a remote technical interface. And you have to enable those. I'm going to show you how that happens here in just a moment. And then once you do that, and they're on the network, then you can access them remotely with the RealVNC viewer. It's not any VNC viewer. You got to use RealVNC. So I'm going to share my RealVNC viewer here. This is just the same Joe Schmo one that anybody can download from the internet. Sorry, looking over my screen there. And okay, there's the RealVNC viewer. Share that. So you can see I've got a pile of Pis that I access via RealVNC. I'm going to use this one. It's one that I use primarily to run a particular program on Nextcloud. So I set up all the properties in this earlier, and of course I've tested it earlier. So there's the IP address and the name that I want to label it and some other goodies. So when I double click on this, it's going to bring it up in a remote screen. You're not going to see it on this screen. I'll have to unshare in just a moment. So stand by. Double click that. And now we're going to go over here and, okay. Now we share this. Okay, so this is the login screen that it gave me to do remotely. And it's just like I'm sitting at a screen and a keyboard at the system, except I'm doing it over a network. So it says, what's your login name? Pi. What's your password for it? R-A-S-P-B-E-R-R-Y. Hope I didn't typo that. The first time you do this to any given Pi, you're going to get a warning message that says, I haven't installed my signature, but that's okay. All right, let's close this thing. Clear and exit. I didn't need to clear that. Hey. So this is the current Pi desktop appearance. Quick little tour here. Most of this stuff is pre-installed. A few of them aren't. So you can see we got a whole bunch of programming languages here, a variety of Java types, Node-RED for those of you familiar with it, Python. Not up, says Scott. Man, after all that. Okay, standing by. There's something funky going on. Oh, that's right. We did this yesterday. It took a little while for it to come up. Scott, I'm stuck in full screen here, so give me a heads up if when it appears. I am on the share screen. It's just like we tested in practice the other day. Oh, that would be just so disappointing if I couldn't get this up. Raggedy schmatz. Stand by, waiting please. Okay, your screen is sharing is paused. I think Scott's done that to me. Let me see if I can unpause that or if that's something that he can do. Resume share, click on that. I know, I'm being silent, stand by. Somewhere a million years ago, back in college, I used to work at the college radio station. And back in those days, of course, we didn't have a lot of money at the college station. Why are you not hitting resume? The biggest crime in radio is dead air, silence. And back in those days, if you had dead air for some reason, you could expect the phone in the studio to ring and somebody starts screaming in your ear, make some sound. Today, that's not possible. Resume share. All right, I'm stuck on this thing. I'm going to stop share. I'll try and reset it once more just to see if we can make it happen. Got a chat over here, just shows connecting to Nextcloud. Well, I am definitely connected, so we're past that point. All right, gonna try this again. That's what I'm doing. Okay, we hit the share button. We pick the top. We hit share. And I can't tell if and when it happens, so I'm gonna count on Scott in about 15. Hey, we're showing. Okay, so Scott. Thank you, Zoom, eventually. All right, back in business, dead air is done. So a quick tour. This is the desktop. And by default, all you get is a trash can and a little tool there. I'm not gonna experiment with that guy yet right now. Up here is kind of like the Windows Start button with all the programs in it. So this stuff is all defaulted, all these programming languages comes with it. You don't have to add them, and there are plenty more that you can add. So everybody asks, what's the programming language that I need to learn if I want to get into support, administration, development? It starts with Python. Java is almost as important. Sonic Pi, really cool thing for making music. This one's new. I haven't played with this yet. SmartSim, I don't know. Comes with the LibreOffice suite. So we've got a word processor, a PowerPoint viewer, spreadsheet, you get the idea. Internet, couple different browsers available here. Chromium, it's kind of a pure Chromium. It's not bad, it's not the fastest out there. I've installed the VLC media player. Hey, that's cool. They make VLC for Raspberry Pi, and you can do a lot of amazing things with that. There's an image viewer, comes with a couple of games. You can make a Minecraft server as well as play Minecraft on a Pi. Some really important and useful utilities here, including this guy, SD Copier. I'm going to show you about him a little bit later. This is what I want you to see, preferences. So we can add, remove software. I don't care about that stuff right now. I want to dive right into Raspberry Pi configuration. So this is a little bit changed from the defaults, but here's where I can change the password that I'm using on the account that I'm logged in as. So I'm presently logged in as Pi. I can change the name of the Pi. That requires a reboot. You can have it boot to this graphical interface or the command line, auto login if you like. Some pretty basic stuff here. this is how we want to get into the system. So I can turn on the camera interface. I'll do that in another PI in a little bit. SSH by default is disabled. So we've got that enabled, and by default, VNC is also disabled. I would have had to turn that on using a keyboard and or mouse and monitor. These two guys, SPI and I2Cs, these are different signaling types of controls that can be used on the input-output pins. There's 3 pins that can be used for input-output on a standard serial port. Kind of important sometimes. There's another I/O port that can be used for connecting devices. They call it the one-mire. And I have never played with remote GPIO, so I'm not going to do with that. And I'm not going to dive into all this stuff. I'm not going to teach you everything you ever needed to know about the PI, just these critical things. I want to show you the same menu. Let's say that something funky is PI and you can't get the graphical environment up. Cool, you can still configure it. We're going to fire up the terminal here, and I'm going to type in the command sudo, all lowercase. Sudo means run this, do this as a supervisor, and then the configuration utility of choice, raspi-config. And now this is all keyboard, no mouse works here. All that same stuff is available here. I'm going to enter on advanced options. That's not what I wanted. Network options, boot options. So this one's kind of important sometimes. Wait for network at boot. Sometimes you try and run a utility that mandates a connection to the network or the internet. But if the system hasn't connected yet, the utility will fail. The interfacing options is the one that I want right now. Here's where I'm going to turn on SSH or VNC or the various features. All right. We did sudo raspi config to get there. Some changes after you get out of here, it'll say you want to reboot. All right, I'm going to unshare that for now. Go back to business here. Let's shrink you just a little bit. Sorry, I got to reconfigure my screen a tad. There we go. Okay, checking messages. Hi, Sean. New to the PI, haven't purchased one yet, but this looks exciting. Thanks for the live. My pleasure. Yeah, us too. We like Teams, Nigel. Oh, yeah. Scott mentions if you haven't used VLC, use it not only because it's a great viewer, but it's also used as a source engine. You can stream with it on the PI. Really cool stuff. Is that PDF using Adobe? Yes, I was using Adobe. All right, back to biz. Well, that's a terrible place for that. Okay, covered all that stuff. Did that. All right, on to using it as a learning tool. So the very first thing that we kind of did in there was to open up a terminal interface. Let me open this guy and show you something. Those of you who have already completed the Core 2, 220-1002 exam won't need this. But for everybody else, there's some pretty doggone amazing stuff. So in the objectives, I'm going to go back into share now. I'm going to show you a list of the objectives. Click on this, click on share, and click on this objective list. So this is a set of objectives from the Core 2, Objective 1.9, given a scenario, use features and tools of Mac OS, which we're not doing today, and Linux client and desktop operating systems. And then they give you in those objectives this list of commands. So it's possible when you take a test that you're not going to get all of questions about every single one of these commands, but you can expect one or two or maybe a few more. So I would do this. If you've got a Linux machine of any kind, it doesn't matter. If you're going to run a virtual machine in Windows, if you're going to build a Linux box on an x86 system, if you're going to use the native terminal of Linux in Mac OS, all great. I'm just saying here's a cool way to use a Pi to just practice some of these things. And again, the really cool thing is if you use noobs and you do something really dangerous here and you screwed up your password, you can't get back in, a quick reboot or a quick reinstall, it only takes a couple of minutes and you're back in biz. So here's all of the commands that they expect us to know in the Linux environment. Just a quick, speedy review here. ls is kind of like the Linux equivalent of the dir command. It lists files and directories and characteristics of them. grep is a really cool command. You can see its old history came from a searcher. What you do is you can tell grep to look in a file and find an instance of text, a sentence, a word, or whatever. And what it'll do is it will find it and put on screen the line in the file that word happened on and everything that's in that line. One of the really amazing and fun things that you can do in the Linux world, and you can do this in the others as well, is take the output of a command that might normally send it to a printer or to a screen. They call that printing actually in Linux, and redirect the output with that vertical bar that's near your enter key. So you say, do the command, vertical bar, and then grep, and that's going to take the output and it redirects it into grep. And then you put the switches and commands after grep, whatever cool word that you want it to find. Maybe you want to find the word expression, it would do that. CD change directory, shutdown's what it sounds like. Know this one for the CompTIA exam, folks. PWD versus password. PWD, present working directory. What folder am I in right now? Password is used to change passwords, not surprisingly. All right, I'm not going to go through all this stuff. I do want to mention this one, sudo and su. So we don't always do everything with sudo. In fact, you should not use sudo unless you have to. But sudo means run the following command as if you were a supervisor and had supervisor powers. And sometimes you have to do that even if you're logged in as a supervisor, a power user with all the appropriate powers. He says, no, I'm not going to do it. And when you see that kind of failure, it doesn't tell you why you failed, just, oh, okay, try it again with sudo. Now you can auto put yourself in a sudo environment that will sort of emulate running sudo in front of every command by running the su command. I type su. Now every command that I run after that runs as if I typed sudo first. Then I can get out of that when I'm done. Anything else really critical? Not that I want to do in this class. All right, stop share. Shrink that guy back down. Go check this. Okay, a couple things have popped up here. Looking for what Scott Jernigan was stating and finally found it. Good. Sudo, run as administrator. One of the things that wipes out Microsoft. Yeah, and of course, Microsoft does the same thing, right? We right click on a command and we say run as administrator. So this thing just sort of shortcuts that. Brenda wants to try Pi-hole. I'm worried my Comcast router won't allow it. Comcast won't even know that you're running it. I use Comcast here at the house and I run Pi-hole. It's invisible. Moving on. Oh, okay, good resources here. Now, I guess we got to finish this. So many things that I'm going to show you here in the first half of this presentation, you can do on other machines. Again, with a virtual machine, you can build a Linux machine. I'm going to talk briefly about how to install a web server on a Raspberry Pi. You can install a web server straight onto a Windows machine. If you haven't experimented with that, I encourage you to do that. Just hit the search box and type in IIS, Internet Information Services, and you'll get some direction on how to, in about 3.5 steps and in about 1 minute, turn your Windows machine into a web server. So why do I want to do any of this on Raspberry Pi? Well, I came up with 4 reasons when I was making these notes. Number one, it's real. So if I set up a web server on my Windows machine and I want to see packets go back and forth between me and that web server, I can't do it. It's all internal. There's nothing for Wireshark to capture. I've got to get somebody external to connect to my machine and Wireshark them. So here's a nice, quick, easy, painless way to do that. I got two boxes. I got my Mac machine or my Windows machine, and it's running Wireshark. And I've got my dedicated little Pi that only cost me 35 bucks. And oh man, you do all the Wireshark activities with that, capture the FTP traffic, capture the telnet traffic and the SSH traffic and web traffic, and yeah, cool. It's incredibly portable, even when it's in its little case. Let me get one here that's in a case. Hey, there's one. Sorry about that delay. There we go. A little higher there. Okay, so just a little cheap plastic case. Quite literally tuck it into a shirt pocket. Very, very portable. And they make battery packs for them, so you can run it remotely, or not remotely, you know what I mean, moving things around. Now, here's one of the things that I do. I have lots and lots of Raspberry Pis running here in the house, most of them upstairs. I got one of them, however, over in the living room, and it's running some services that I often demonstrate when I go on the road and teach various classes. We show them how to use the Raspberry Pi in class, and we use the Raspberry Pi in class. And then I say, now let's go hit the one at my house. And so my router here is port forwarded to the Pi for all four of the common services that we've addressed here. So I can SSH to it, I can telnet to it, I can FTP to it, I got a web server running on it, and that is just cooler than all get out. And since I would normally run this kind of stuff on a laptop, this just makes a ton more sense. I can leave this at home, I can hook it up at the office. If I can convince Michael to let me port forward there, he won't, but you get the idea. And again, for 35 bucks, so many things you can do with this stuff. When I'm done and you want to talk about how to get more information, how can you do that? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Let me look over here, contact info, this. So let me do a little bit sharing, because sharing is caring, they say. Sorry, got my camera right in front of, oh, you know what, I can change that. No, I don't want to do that. Goodness gracious. Okay, I want to raise this up so I can see that, and that doesn't help. There we go, I can do it that way. So how can you get help on learning more about this stuff? Well, there's a million places. I've got two different lists that I want you to see. Here's the first one, Raspberry Pi resources. Number one, raspberrypi.org. There are incredibly active forums out there for every topic and subtopic and how to, and it's really cool stuff, and even some off-topic kind of things. There are classes, and in fact, many of you are familiar with Udemy. A couple of you haven't looked into those yet. Do keep your eye out for those. Every now and again, they've got $5 or $10 sales on a course. And so the little link here, just go to udemy.com and do a search on Raspberry or Raspberry Pi. I did this search this morning. Scott made this link for me. And there are 770 listed courses on Raspberry Pi from simple to end. These two I put up just because they're an example. If you do a Google and look for Raspberry Pi projects, you will find hundreds, if not thousands, of hits of places where people document, excuse me, those projects. So here's one on Ubuntu Pit, there it is. It's got 20 really neat projects. This is the first time I've ever seen that one when I went to it today. Tom's Hardware's got a top 10 list. I get a lot of ideas from PiMyLifeUp.com. People, it's very informal there. Folks come up with a project for a Pi, they document it, they write it up, and they post it over on PiMyLifeUp. Sometimes they need a little tweaking. I've gone in there and downloaded, and their stuff didn't work, maybe because they were out of date or whatever. But a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of digging, and you can make some really amazing things. But Google Raspberry Pi, and you're going to find all kinds of goodies. Something new has popped up. Bought a 4 with 4 gigs the week after the 8 gig version came out. That's always a robbery. I think I'm foolish. I go and the second a new Pi comes out, I go buy it. And then the reports of the stuff that doesn't work or needs tweaked or whatever comes out. And I've always got this one that's an original version, and yeah, it mostly works, but a little fuzzy. Sorry about the shaky cam there. I bumped my table. Dave, how many do I have? I have about 100 with about 60 or so running at any given time. Let me show you something. These I have disconnected for today's show. There are 5 more of these. Most of them are working and plugged in right now. I got an interesting one down here that I want to show you in a little bit. Yes, you can cluster with those. Way to go, Assads. You haven't spent enough on accessories, but you're off to a good start. Buy problem. Yeah, it definitely calls for a meeting with the wife before I buy anything new. I have to give up something. Can't eat lunch this week. Huge sale on Udemy today and tomorrow. Hey, I'm going to remind you of that when we get done at the end of the day. So as you're done with me, head on over to Udemy and start chasing them down. What can you do with a cluster? All right, I'll answer that right now. Here's what I can do. See, this is right side up. I'm going to take one of the, I'm going to take 5 of these, and I'm going to set 5 identical websites on them. What? Are you crazy? No, because then I'm going to take the last one and I'm going to turn it into a load balancer. The job of a load balancer says anytime a call comes in for the website, it stops off at the load balancer, and then the load balancer directs it to one of the web servers. And there's all kinds of different algorithms that it uses, busyness, it's your turn, whatever the case may be. So that's one thing to do. When you go to the raspberrypi.org website, they've got a couple of 100 Raspis running their web server, and it's as fast as any web server as you can imagine. It uses a connection to a separate NAS where all the web pages are kept. I can turn this into a supercomputer. Now, it's not going to obviously be as powerful as the big new high-speed Japanese supercomputer that just broke all the records, but this is a training aid for a lot of folks who are learning to program and code supercomputers. They learn the various breakup mechanisms on how to get this part of the program in here and this part of the program in here. And there's a really important concept in supercomputing called messaging. Messaging says I've got a controller computer who's responsible for taking the program, tearing it into its processable chunks, sending them to the various things, and then communicating with these different cluster elements. How you doing? What's the status? Okay, send me the result. I'll start accumulating it here, and I'll give you another piece. Well, that's a very specific communications protocol called messaging, and this is a heck of a learning tool to start something like that. Yeah, I wish I've looked at a data center with a Pi data center. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that at the end because that's kind of cool. All right, curriculum notes, back to them. So what can I do now? Let's get real. Let's get this sort of applied to what we're doing. Step number 1, the very first, I think, practical use of the Raspberry Pi in preparing for CompTIA is to practice those Linux commands. And I just want to do a little bit of a reminder here. Back here, we'll bring that one back up. I think I left that, yeah, shareable. Good, that's all set to be shared. I'm learning. I should SSH to it, but we'll do that another time. All right, let me know if you can't see that. I can't see YouTube right now, but Scott will fill me in. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to run this pwd command, present working directory. Notice, okay, terminal is up and hopefully it's big enough to see. Let me know, Scott. Notice that I can't tell what folder, what my working directory is right now by looking at this prompt. It just says my user account name, good, is Pi, and I'm logged into a Raspberry Pi called Nextcloud. So I'm going to type pwd, and notice that this works like the internet, not like Windows when it comes to displaying a path. We use a /, and we don't have drive letters. There's no C drive or D drive. The top of the file system is called / or whack, of course. And then I got a folder underneath there called home / a folder under there called Pi. If I do an ls in here, it shows me, and you can program this to do different things. Folders are listed in blue, excuse me. Files are listed in monochromes, and they are case sensitive. So notice I got a folder here called downloads. If I say cd space downloads and I make it all lowercase, it says, I don't know what you're talking about. So we try it again, cd capital D downloads. When you are successful at doing something in the Linux environment, you may not know it. What you'll know is that you didn't fail because you didn't get an error message. Now, in this case, the prompt did update right now. It shows me I'm in tilde, which is another way in Windows of saying your home folder, and then downloads. I can see that in full scale with my friend pwd. If I do an ls in the downloads folder, it's empty. I don't have anything in here. All right, so there's some specific commands that are really important for your day-to-day purpose. I wanted to show you that. I want to show you a couple of conventions. Switches. In Windows, we use switches like /awp, whatever, WAP. In here, it says, nope, we don't do that. We do a clear to start that from clean. We do ls, always a space after the command, always a space after the command, because otherwise, if I do a dash, it thinks that's part of the command. It thinks there's a command that starts with ls dash. So ls space minus, that's the switch holder, L. Nothing. Oh, let's go back up one. CD space dot dot. Now I'm up one, clear, ls dash L, ls space minus A. So you can see the L gives me a lot of information over here. These tell me about permissions. Here I just get a more subtle listing. And there's a few things that I can see here when I add that minus A that you can't see with L. There's a lot of switches with ls. Let me show you this. Some commands call for a double dash. In this case, I'm going to do ls space minus minus help. And if I scroll up through here and scroll up and scroll up and scroll up, there are zillions and zillions and zillions of switches. Some are uppercase, some are lowercase. It's pretty involved stuff. All right, and I think there was one other convention that I wanted to talk about. You see that's here. Switches, path separators, case sensitivity. Oh yeah. So most commands will have a dash dash help. You will also often find them in what are called the man pages, short for manual. I can say man space ls. Show me the manual on how the ls command works. And you get a slightly different animal. I can do page down at a time, line at a time. To get out of this thing, it tells me at the bottom, H for help or Q to quit. Now we're using a terminal here, and the more accurate name for it is called a shell. This particular shell is called a bash shell. It has built into it a lot of commands that are native to bash scripting. There are C shells. They have a lot of commands in there that are native to C programming. There's a corn shell with a K. There's a Bourne shell with a B. And every one of those is different. They all have a lot of similarities, but the man page in a Bourne shell is going to be different than the man page in a bash shell. And same for the list of commands. Okay, I'm going to stop that share. Now I'm going to keep that going. I'm just going to work here for a second. All right. I want to talk about this command. It's the apt command. And there are two versions of apt. Apt is the newest one, and apt-get. And Scott or Michael will look up what apt stands for. It's advanced package something. And it is used for four purposes. It is used to find and search for applications that can be installed. It's used to install them. It's used to remove them. And then there's some other kind of cleanup oriented things. And I'll show you a little bit about that. You can use either of them generally interchangeably. apt-get is supposed to be sort of better optimized for scripting, and apt is supposed to be better for working live with commands. So what I want to do is I'm going to get rid of a program here that I have installed just so I can show you a real basic thing to do. So I'm going to use sudo here, if necessary. Sudo apt remove, and then a program that I have installed called htop. Boom, buzz, buzz, grind, grind. I get a warning. And notice this warning at the end. It says, do you want to continue capital Y / lowercase n? Whenever it does that, it means if you hit the enter key, the capitalized letter will happen. You could also manually put it in. And this is one I can put in lowercase or uppercase. I can put in Y or N. So I'll put in a lowercase y. Very unusual thing, but it's files and directories and commands that are case sensitive, some of these kinds of things. Okay, all done. htop is gone. If I do an attempt to run it, htop says, hey, that's not a command in here. I don't know what you're talking about. So I was told by my friend about this really cool program called htop, and it's better than the native program called top. So let me show you top real quickly. Top is a process viewer. It's kind of like Task Manager in Windows. Take your time. Come on up whenever you feel like it. Okay, notice that I didn't run sudo with that one. It's just a little program, and it shows me a list of generally ordered projects and processes, things that are going on with my computer. It's interactive. Every time something new happens, if I move the mouse, some sub-process is triggering that tracks that stuff, and it affects this thing. I'm going to hit Q to quit out of there. Okay, it stopped. I'll hit clear to make it go away. So my friend told me about this program that's better than top, and it's called htop. So here we go. We're going to do sudo. I could use apt or apt-get, doesn't matter. Notice that when I use the apt, there's a progress bar down on the bottom. apt-get doesn't do that. Again, because it's all about scripting, and scripts don't care about watching the process. Sudo apt install htop. And while it's doing that, what we want to know is how it knows to do that. Built into all versions of Debian and Linux is a list of what are called repositories. It's some cloud site out there that holds thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of programs. And if you know the name of one of them, I'll help you figure out how to know those, then it will reach out to one of the repositories in its list. You can add repositories in the list. So he reaches out, he finds the program, and he installs it. And that'll take a minute. So while that's happening, you saw me do sudo apt install, remove. There's also some cleanups. There's auto clean and auto remove. There is a GUI alternative. It's not built into most versions of Linux. It's called synaptic, S-Y-N-A-P-T-I-C. We'll do a sudo apt install synaptic, and then you can do all of this stuff, including the viewing and reviewing and searching for programs, and then pick one to install. It's very, very cool. Well, that's happening, dragging itself slowly. Let me check and see what kind of messages are cooking. Michael, thank you. I always get apt-get and apt backward about which one is used for scripting and which one doesn't. And Michael always corrects me, so many thanks, bud. Okay, moving up here. What can you do with a cluster? Asides is talking to Andre. Load balancing. Can we run GTA on one? What, just one thing? I tend to open one up for each user. Why do our noses itch during live stream? They're compatible. I mean, it's contagious. It's like sneezing. Hey, Matt Orton, new voice or new voice. Haven't seen you or don't recognize you before. Welcome. Seashells. You know, the best shell that they say out there these days is Z, as in Zulu shell. All right, HTOP has completed its installation. Advanced packet tool. Thank you, Scott. That was packaging. That's really weird. Okay, I accept that on faith, but I ran into at some point on a Linux Plus test where I didn't pass, but I don't recall packet. Oh, okay, Scott is perhaps updating. All right, let me go back to that screen, see what's cooking here. So now it's installed. I can run HTOP again. What am I looking at? Oh, HTOP. Don't need sudo. And hey, better, smarter, stronger, faster, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. It's got a little more information. It's filterable and searchable, and it's pretty cool stuff. All right. So the point wasn't to show you HTOP. The point was show you apt. How am I doing on time? It is 7 minutes past the hour. That's going to work out just about right. Clear. So I've got this terminal that I've accessed by using the GUI interface, but we went into the configuration early on after the install and enabled SSH. So I want to show you SSH access to it. I'm going to unshare this screen for a moment. Stop sharing. And I'm going to bring up a new program. Mike has demonstrated this and some other things. Free download. It's called PuTTY. P-U-T-T-Y. Let me get that guy going and share him. All right, so I launched the PuTTY program. This is a cool program. You don't install this one. It's a standalone exe. Whatever folder you put it in, you just run it, and off we go. So first thing I got to do is put in the IP address of the server in question. It's 192.168.1.131, I think. And we want to do an SSH connection to it. So I have SSH selected, and PuTTY automatically fills in. It says, okay, I know that's port 22. If I wanted to do a telnet session with it, first of all, I would have to install a telnet server, what they call a daemon on there. And notice when I picked that, he said, oh, well, that's port 23. And as you may know, telnet is unsecured. Everything's in the clear. If somebody were wire sharking me, they could watch everything I'm about to type in and everything that happens. But I didn't install a telnet server. I'll do SSH. That's secure, which is a fancy word that means encrypted. So we're ready to hit the open button here. Open. Screen sharing has stopped as the shared window is closed. That's okay. So now I'm going to share this screen. I hope. I got an error. It's the wrong IP address. Stand by. Let me go over to. Come here. I got so many different things running. I don't know where to begin. Okay, we'll go to VNC and we'll run IP space address. And I'm on the wireless LAN on here. Well, there's no way that that's even close to right. 1.231. Oh, did I do 131? All right, back into PuTTY. I'll bring you up here. You saw this part already, so I'm just going to speed through this. PuTTY 192.168.1.231. SSH on port 22. There we go. Okay, let me get that shared with you again. Close out of here, reshare. Okay, so you see I got a little message here. It says you have never used this computer, my laptop, to establish a PuTTY session, an SSH session with this thing. So you're getting a warning that says, do you want me to put the fingerprints of this computer in? And you can say yes, you can say no. If I say no, I'll get the same warning next time, and I like to demonstrate that, so I'll say no. So I've got the same terminal connection now to a bash shell, except now I'm using PuTTY instead of that GUI. So I'm going to log in as Pi. Now watch what happens here when it prompts me for the password. When I used the GUI version, I typed in the password and it gave me dots or asterisks or something like that. When I type in the password here, RASPBERRY, nothing appears on the screen. It doesn't move with spaces. Nothing happens. And that's in case somebody's looking over my shoulder. They won't know how many keys I hit and so forth. It's high security. Problem with this, I'm going to hit the enter key now. Hey, I didn't typo it. Is the world gets a lot of tech support calls. Those of you who are looking for that first desktop tech support, this is one of the calls you're going to get. I typed the password in and nothing's happening and I can't get in. And that's why. You just can't see what you're typing. You got to type slowly and carefully or be one heck of a touch typist. So all the same commands work exactly the same way. I can clear, I can run htop over here. And I can do sudo apt-get and sudo installs and all of that good stuff. Looking at your notes here. Why never use 10? Okay, I see Scott answered that. Yeah, and it's not just the passwords that go in the clear, everything does. So SSH definitely advanced version. Okay, nothing new going on. Okay, WinSCP or Scotty. Oh, and Michael, who is just the Windows and Linux guru, I don't scratch his surface, wanted me to remind you that the latest version of Windows, the 2004 release that goes by some new marvelously cryptic name, has included the second generation of Windows System for Linux, WSL2, and it has apparently a cool and powerful shell program in there, a new version of sort of a PuTTY-like SSH client. Okay, I'm going to get out of this SSH client and do everything else with the GUI. It's more fun. Exit and screen sharing auto stopped. I like that. Quarter after, I got 45 minutes. Did it. Now, if you're ever going to install a program anytime, anywhere, you got to start with a sudo apt update and a sudo apt upgrade. Even if you just did that and you installed a new program, do it again. There's an 8 out of 10 chance that's really necessary. I want to show you the beginning steps of setting up an FTP server. So let me head back over to our VNC connection. I'm sharing. I'm going to clear screen here. So there is no built-in FTP server in most versions of Linux. Now, if you want to set up an FTP server on your Windows machine, there's FileZilla. But if you've got an Ubuntu virtual machine or a standalone virtual, you need to install some kind of FTP server. And there's a bazillion of them out there. I think the one that I'm about to demonstrate to you is a little out of date, but I'm going to get the process started. It'll take a few minutes. So I'll come back and talk about some other things. I'm going to do sudo. We'll do an apt-get this time instead of apt. Same thing. Sudo apt-get install. And it's VS, it's the group that made it, FTP, and they added a D to it. It's a daemon, which means it's a server. I'm going to install that on here. And we'll do buzz, 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 grind, grind, grind. And I'm going to let that do its thing and unshare for a couple of minutes while he's doing his business and tell you a little bit about what has to happen next. Okay, I believe that I have unshared. Let's see something here. Yes, I have unshared. So once this thing gets installed, you got an FTP server running in your computer. There are still two things that you do. Thanks, Scott. One is to make a place for files to be uploaded to and downloaded from. You can pick any place that you want, makes no difference. So I often do one under my home folder, and I usually do it 2 levels deeper than that. Then you have to set up permissions in that folder so that it can be written to and read from and whatever. It's a real easy thing, and there's a bazillion scripts out there on the net. And then the final thing that you've got to do is there's a configuration file that you have to go update. Okay, that's not the final thing, it's the second final thing you do. So you're going to go update this folder. It's going to include simple things like banners. When somebody connects to your FTP server, welcome to Dave's FTP server. And then there's some other techno configure stuff that you've got to do in there. And it lives in what's called the etc folder. I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so you've got that file configured. The last thing you need to do is to authorize accounts to use that folder. Now you could go crazy. You could make a single account, make an account called Fred, and Fred is authorized to use the FTP folder. So now when somebody uses an FTP client, FileZilla, the command line client that's been built into Windows for a decade or more, and they connect to my FTP server, there's going to be a login prompt. And so they log in as Fred and whatever password I set for Fred, and off they go. They'll be automatically sent to that folder, and you can make that folder look like it's the highest level of the structure. So they won't know that they're 4 levels deep. They'll just think the root is up here. But while this guy is logged in as Fred doing stuff, somebody else could log in as Fred, and they would both be conflicting with each other. So it makes more sense to make accounts and approve each account independently and give it its own password and things like that. Now there is, if you haven't played with this, another kind of FTP server called an anonymous FTP server. This one can be set to be anonymous. And in that case, anybody who wants to use this server, if you're crazy enough to do this, and there are safe ways to do it, they would log in with the account name anonymous. Just spell out the word anonymous. Some people will look it up. Okay, I do. And then the password, they'll be prompted for a password, is you have to put in anything that looks like an email address. It doesn't have to be real. Every time I use an anonymous server, there's not many left out there. I use mail@mail.com. And it says, okay, good, I'm good with that. And then it lets you into the FTP server. So very cool piece of techno. All right, I see a couple of notes that I'm falling behind on. I need to look. Okay, good, I'm clear up there. Thank you. NSCP, some companies use Team Connect instead of PuTTY. Why? I don't know. Because I didn't know it was there. I've been using PuTTY for as long as I've known about it. Let's go with that. All right, slipping back over to this file. So there's an FTP server. I have an FTP server running somewhere. Big deal. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you can make an FTP server, and it's got some use. One of the things that I can do in that FTP configuration file is change the default port. Now, Mike did a contest with you guys when he talked about FTP a while back, and I'm sure you all remember default ports for FTP servers are 20 and 21. They don't have to be. I can pick any unused port in my Raspberry Pi and change it from its default. Make it 37, make it 99, make it 8086, whatever the case may be. And then when you run your client, you have to do the same thing. When you open up a session with that FTP server, you're going to have to add to the IP address connection line :8086:99, whatever that case may be. And that's kind of a cool thing. They call that security by obscuration. It's not very secure, but you can see it's got its potential values. To access, I do want to show you one thing. If you haven't done this in the past, most browsers, but not all of them, have a built-in FTP server, not just a web server. So when you go to a web address using Firefox, you just type in the name of the web address, and the system stops and it makes a DNS call and it learns the IP address of the web server you're trying to hit, and that's what it sends out. It sends 13.13.13.13. And while you never see it, he does :80 or :443 if we're going for a secure server. You can change web server port addresses in the same way. When you access it, add : and the alternate address. Ooh, cool. You should be experimenting with that tomorrow and all weekend. Well, Firefox and other browsers have a built-in FTP server. Now, you know, when you use your browser, while you didn't type it in, the system automatically precedes the address with http : web address, or https : for a secure server. Well, you can do the same thing with Firefox and other browsers by starting it with FTP : and then either the DNS name of an FTP server or the IP address of an FTP server. So Google that sometime, do a Google search for active FTP servers, and then try and use your browser and see if you can do FTP : to that server. Some pretty cool stuff. All right, I'm going to share out my Pi again. Moving over to, okay, I'm sharing the wrong thing, huh? No, I wasn't, but. Okay, that looks good. And that looks good. Now, okay, I'm working here. So there's this folder called Etsy. And there are bazillions of things in there. And there's my vsftpd.conf file. Here's a way to look at it, quick down and dirty. I can cat it, cat vsftpd.conf, configuration. Zoom, and the whole thing just zoomed by me. That doesn't help me much. And by the way, all these pound signs at the beginning of the line are comment outlines. Don't do whatever you see on this line. In the objectives for commands, there is a call to run an editor called VI. I used VI when I was in college, and we were still writing with ends of burnt sticks. So I just cannot use it. Michael is a guru in it. He has convinced me that it's the greatest thing for some tasks. But I'm like you guys, give me a nice semi-graphical or graphical, and the command that I want to show you here is nano. Nano is a text editor. because of where I am and because of what the file is, I'm going to precede it with sudo. So I'm going to sudo nano and then the name of the file, bsftpd.conf. And now I'm editing it. Here's where I would allow anonymous FTP. I would simply delete that rem line. Actually, that's the instructions. Let me go back and put that back. It's the next line. Anonymous able equals, and I would make this say yes. And again, there's a lot of other important things that need to be configured in here. That's not my point. My point is to show you the nano file, the nano program. So when I want to get out of here, it's kind of a multi-step process. First thing I have to do is, come here, you, I got to move it. I got stuff in front of my camera here. I'm going to control X. And it says, hey, if you made any changes, do you want me to save those changes? Yes, I do. So I hit the letter Y. And now it says, what's the file name that you want me to change it to? And if I just enter on this, it's going to overwrite the existing one. No warnings, no errors. Or I could call this an experimental, make it conf1. But I'm just going to hit the enter key and overwrite the old one. No errors, no warnings. And that's the truth in a lot of Linux. If you're going to overwrite a file, you just do, and you'll never know it, and you'll never see what happens. Terrifying. Moving on. How are we doing here? Coming up on the half. All right, a web server. I've got one installed on this machine. Let me see if I can find a machine that I don't have one on. So we stop that share. Take forever to uninstall one. Not going to do it. I'm just going to demo the process and let it warn me. Oh no, I got one I'm going to remove it on. So go over to VNC, break the connection with this server, exit U. It's going to be small text. Bear with me. Okay, VNC, pick another server. Oh, this one may not have a web server on there. All right, let me share this out. All right, this is a really cool machine. Not sure if what I'm about to show you, this is not the web server. I haven't installed it. Oh, wait a minute. Try that again without the dash and get a space there. All right. Can you guys see? I guess I can look at my own YouTube screen. Yeah, you can. All right. That's a Raspberry Pi with a VidCam attached, looking out my front yard. Man, this is awesome living in the future, being able to do this. Not that you can attach a camera to a computer, but that we can pass it to Zoom and pass it to YouTube and pass it all over the world. That is just slicker than anything. So a little real-time video feed. Wow. I have a, oh, I see. My son was playing with the Pi this morning. He pointed in a funky thing. You can't see my flag. All right, I'm going to unshare that, so that's cool, but not what I wanted to do. I'm not going to unshare that. I'm going to quit out of it. Go to the right page. Oh, okay, we're out of there. This is the ifconfig command. It's considered old and out of dated. ifconfig. You can see here my wireless LAN information. 1.116. The updated command to do stuff like that is the IP command, IP address, for instance. A lot of similar information. There's some more and less here and there. Is that too small? Can you see that? Or I can change this font size. Or we did that. Window, close tab, close window, edit, clear scroll, but preferences. Yeah, definitely too tiny. Stand by, I'm working that out. Oh, here's, we changed it here. I think we did 24 on that other one. Then we got a scaling problem. Oh, we have to go over here and change the scaling on here. Stand by, working. All right, this may run off the edge of the screen, but I'll be able to show you what I need to show you. To install a web server, again, really awesome thing for learning in both A+ and Net+, to a lesser extent Security+, sudo apt install Apache 2. Now, there's more than Apache out there, but Apache is pretty much the #1 web server. By the way, if you can see that lightning bolt that periodically pops up in here, that means power supply is not big enough to drive this, what I'm doing here. Now, he's going to tell me right away if I already got an Apache web server running in here. Okay, now it's already in there, and he says, hey, if you wanted to get rid of it, get rid of it. But it would take 4 or 5 minutes. It's a big download, lots of support files. But then all you got to do is browse to the IP address of your Raspberry Pi, or browse to its name if you've got it set up to support NetBIOS or something like that. It's a simple thing. Sudo apt install Apache 2. And after you've done that, you can do everything. So if you're working on Java or you're working on Python scripts that you want to incorporate into that web server, man, what a cool thing. I've got a web server running on some server out there that is interactive. You can go to it. It's got a camera that looks at a little LED display that I have, and you can control the LED display. You type in the text that you want to appear on that display. You click the button, that gets fed to a Java program. Java sends it to the various input-output ports on the Pi, and message goes up there. So that leads to just an amazingly cool thing. I'm going to take a second here and see if I can get this set so that it is visible for future stuff. Let's back this down from 24 to 18. 16. Okay, okay. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, we'll use that. Well, you got to use the right buttons in the right place. Clicking and dragging is not something this thing is happy about. Looks good. Okay, good. All right, going back to Uncle Curriculum. I'll leave that up for a second. So we talked about RealVNC. You just go to the Preferences module and enable RealVNC, Preferences, Raspberry Pi configuration, interfaces, and enable VNC. There's nothing else that you have to do on the Pi. All you've got to do now is download the RealVNC client and install or do a setup for a new connection. It's a real piece of cake. Hey, that just saved 12 minutes off the Samba. So this one I'm not going to do a full demo because it takes so long to do, but Microsoft, to my understanding, Michael can correct me if I'm wrong, owns the rights to a protocol called SMB, Server Message Blocks. And the name is kind of cryptic. What it means to you and I is shares. It is because of SMB that we are able to take a folder or a file on my computer and say, share this out. And that makes it possible for somebody else to come to my computer, access it remotely, and access that file. And I can set up degrees of access. You can read it, you can delete it, you can change it, you can do whatever. And printer sharing is done using a similar protocol, SMB. Well, SMB is good. People like it. People use it. And so the Linux folks and the Unix folks said, we got to have that. Hey, Microsoft, can we license that? I doubt they ever even actually asked for two reasons. One, it's almost assuredly that if Microsoft said yes, it would come with a very hefty price tag. And two, the Linux folks are out there creating all of this open source stuff that's as good as or better or identical to or whatever. So they created a functionally identical protocol called Samba, S-A-M-B-A. Excuse me. And you therefore can set up a Samba server on here. It's the usual sudo apt-get. It's a little more involved. Can I get to this and see this at the same time? Probably not. How can I do that? Oh, I can do it like this. This will be cool. So we could type in sudo apt or apt-get install Samba. Now, if you're going to install more than one thing, you could wait till Samba was done and then do a sudo apt install something else and a sudo apt install something else. Or if you're going to install multiple things, you can do them all on the same line. You just separate all those packages with a space. So when you install Samba, you also install samba-common-bin, Samba common bin. And I'll hit the big enter key on here. Oh, because I said sud. Sudo. Hey, Buzz. Oh, I didn't do an update or an upgrade. But he's letting me go on. You want to continue? Sure. Knock yourself out. All right, I'll let that run and come back and talk to you. So this is the protocol, the service being installed. Typos are awesome. Says the editor who catches everybody's typos. Thank you. Train of thought there. So Samba is just utterly awesome. And once you've installed the protocol, now you got to say, okay, what are you going to share? So next step after it's installed is to create a folder that's going to be your shared folder. And then just like VSFTPD, there's a configuration file. Let me click on this so I can go see what I'm doing. There we go. Excuse me. And in there, you're going to set up the share name, the path, the read-write permissions, controls, and things like that. So yeah, I use my friend Nano, program it with that. Same thing, you're going to create Samba users. So you use the user accounts that exist, and then you authorize them, or you can do it in kind of a duplicative process. There's a command that comes in with Samba called SMB Samba password, and that's used for creating and setting up. Sorry, that doesn't create users. That sets the Samba password for user accounts. Most, I don't want to say most, many installs, once you do them, they work. Some of them require either a service reboot, or you can reboot the whole pie and that'll restart all the services. And this is one of those ones. All right, now let's turn all of this back into a learning protocol. Setting up servers is great. I can learn from them, by using them, by trying the different commands on them, by reconfiguring them, changing those configurations. So in and of itself, it's a great standalone thing to do. But then when you start getting really into the things, people ask Mike all the time, how do I memorize ports? Well, you start the old-fashioned way. You start with flashcards, and you start by just rote memorization. But the best way to learn anything is to learn it and to use it. So one of the things you can do is look at the default parts, change them, but changing them isn't really going to help you learn it much, is it? So particularly folks in the Network Plus study arena, and to a lesser degree, those folks in A+, you want to get yourself a copy of Wireshark. You set that up on your laptop. You set the client up on your laptop, your FTP client, your SSH laptop, and you start capturing packets. And just do something quick and simple. Set up an SSH connection, do an SSH connection to Secure Shell on your Raspberry Pi, log in, run a command, ls, and then stop the Wireshark capture. Now, there's not too many packets in there to drill down through. And you'll see your IP address, and you'll see the IP address of the Pi, and you can use Wireshark and say, just show me the port 23, port 22 oriented communications, and you'll just see that stuff. You won't see all the other stuff that your computer's doing in the background, like syncing Dropbox and attached to this website and so forth. And you'll see those ports in there. You'll find it's broken down in 3 different places. Man, how cool is that? And I think one of the coolest labs that I do in class is I start with a configuration like that, except we do a telnet connection. We capture the login of a whole telnet session and an LS. And then when you look in Wireshark at the capture results, you see everything that happened. You see every keystroke and every letter that got sent from your machine to the Pi, and every machine or line that comes back from that Pi. And we wipe it out, and we do an SSH connection, and it looks to the user like they're doing exactly the same thing. They get the same login prompt, they get the same password prompt, they run ls, they see the same results, stop the capture. But now when you look at it, you will see 2 things. The headers, the IP addresses, the MAC addresses, and all that stuff, that doesn't get scrambled. That would get lost and confused on the internet. But when you look at the data that moves back and forth, it's just hashy gobbledygook. Do the same thing then with your FTP. Do the same thing with the secure FTP or an FTPS. Do the same thing with 2 web server setups. Do a port 80 in the clear web setup. Do a port 443 HTTPS setup. And man, that is just the coolest thing to see, the most awesome way to learn. Man, I just live for that stuff. And when I do a network class or a network plus class, I got 2 days worth of labs there. We just have a blast with that because we're learning about Wireshark, we're learning about protocols, we're learning about how things happen. It's got everything. Do it. Can I convince you more? Checking some messages here. We're coming up on the final 15, and I have just the perfect way to finish up that final 15. Yes, living in the future, says Scott, and it is typos, you big jerk. Pi perfection. Yeah, Pi is absolutely perfect. So good in Network Plus, very good in A+, again, especially when we're talking about those Linux commands. All right, so I want to talk just for the last 10, 15 minutes here about some knockout cool things that you can do with Pis. And I've kind of broken them down into 2 categories. One of them is things that you don't have to buy more stuff for, things that you can do with just a Pi and a case and a power supply. And then the other one is if you want to open up your wallets a little bit, then you can see a little bit more. So I showed you one already, a camera. Pi Foundation has, Raspberry Pi Foundation, 4 different cameras now. A couple of them are out of date. There's an older 5 megapixel one. That's the one that I was actually using that I demoed to you looking out my front door. They have an 8 megapixel one and an 8 megapixel one that has no IR filter. So it's a night camera. Great for watching neighbors walk the cul-de-sac at night, or well, you got animals in the back. I have woods in the back of my house, and I get deer that jump over my 8-foot fence. And of course, I have lots of rodents that dig under our fence between the raccoons and the armadillos and so forth. Man, what a cool thing to do with that. And they most recently came out with a new camera. They're 12 megapixel, and that one's different. The first 3 generations of cameras have a little plastic lens on them. It's a fixed focus lens. Live with it or don't. It is what it is. Now, what we were doing with these things not long ago is we would remove the lens. Now, it can't focus on anything. It's just an utter horrible blur that you can't see with. But I used one technique, and lots of people use a similar one for different cameras. I 3D printed a mount for Canon lenses. So I could take one of my Canon lenses and mount it on the front of there. And whoever designed this thing designed it in such a way that because of the Canon mount, the focus goes back to just the right place. And they put a little mounting hole in there for this little camera sensor that has no lens on it. So here comes an image through the lens into the little barrel and focuses beautifully on the camera sensor. And now I could use any camera lens on that I want. Super freaking cool. I took that same camera, lens is still out of it, 3D printed a little back base for it that I could just mount into it, and mounted that on the eyepiece of my telescope. Now that is just freaking cool. So I get a moon or a star coming into the telescope, reflecting through all the nonsense to the camera sensor, to the Pi, and from there I can do send it to an HDMI monitor or 65-inch, this is so cool, television screen, or I can capture it using vid capture commands. Man, and it cost me the price of 3D printing a little bit of stuff. So some plastic and a friend with a 3D printer or whatever. Now the new camera already comes lensless, and it has 2 camera mounts that come with it, 2 lens mounts. There's a C lens mount. I know that one because I have some C lenses. And there's another one that I don't know because I don't know that kind of lens, but just awesome. Neat things you can do with that. So we can capture stills. You can capture videos. As we mentioned earlier, if you want to watch videos you've captured, you've downloaded, VLC, there's a VLC for Raspberry Pi. And just like VLC for PC and I presume for Mac, free download. And you can use it as an engine to stream live video. Man, is that the coolest thing? You set that thing up as a streamer at the house and put the camera pointing to the backyard to watch the dogs that break into it. And I'm at work, I hit it with a port forwarded connection and I'm watching my backyard. Yeah, definitely coming up on that, Scott. I got that. There's audio streamers, built-in code. I said built-in coders on my notes, codecs. All right, so some people have heard of PuTTY. Getting to used to be called, what the heck was it? XBMC. That was it. It was Xbox Media Controller, and that was a little program that somebody wrote that would allow your Xbox to reach out to various video sources on the internet and view them. Well, somebody ported that thing over to Linux and PC and Mac and everything else. And of course, one is available for the Pi. And every time a new Pi comes out with more memory and more powerful processor and better video, the better PuTTY gets. So PuTTY is this program that is just a gigantic list of well-organized and with a good user interface of bazillions of streaming sites on the web. So if you want to go look and see what the wombats in the Sydney Zoo are doing, somebody's got a camera on there. And if you want to watch a bank of episodes of Red Dwarf, those of you who get that, I've done a Red Dwarf reference in the past, it's there. And all that stuff that you get on Netflix and Hulu and stuff, all that stuff's out there, and bazillions more. There is a specific distro available in the downloads area at Raspberry Pi Forum that totally optimizes PuTTY, or you can, of course, install it manually yourself. I got 10 minutes. that gives me a chance to talk about this one. All right, this one drives me just absolutely nuts. There is a program, there's a distro if you like, called RetroPie out there. RetroPie has a couple 50,000, some insane number like that, maybe not that many, of retro games, the old 8-bit games and 16-bit games and so forth. It supports traditional controllers. You can use keyboards, you can use mice, and you can build a RetroPie box for the same price as any other Pi setup. You need a Pi, you need a case, you need a power supply, monitor, keyboard, mouse, optional, I think, unless you can use that for gaming. And it's a free download. So what did you spend? 60 bucks if you already had some of that stuff? There goes Greg, who loves RetroPie. Dave, I hope you made your own, because when I go online, I'm looking for Raspberry Pi stuff on Craigslist. Yeah, I do that a lot, because you can't have 100 Pis lying around the house if you buy them new all the time. That comes with divorce papers. But there are people out there selling RetroPie with no cool additions like an arcade box for 200 bucks or 250 bucks. And it just, okay, free market. I'm a free market guy. More power to you. But it just drives me nuts that they would charge that much for something that almost anybody could do, following a little step by step. So RetroPie, really cool stuff. And there are folks who make game cabinets like the old arcade games with push buttons and things like that. And they interface into the IO ports. And it's a really slick thing. And all those great old games. Zaxxon was my game of choice. Everybody, of course, loves Pac-Man and Asteroids and Space Invaders. Yes, love Space Invaders. All right, so you don't need to buy all that stuff. You can play RetroPie for the price of a Pi and the usual accessories. Here's a cool thing you can do for free: intrusion detection. So your home computer, again, I'm looking out at all of you. I see every one of your faces. Can't see how many of you are because of my screen setup, but I think there is, I don't know, about 700 people watching right now. And none of you, except for Tulowit and Corporal and a couple others, has intrusion detection set up at the house. So Raspberry Pi and an app called Fail to Ban, one word, missile command. And you've got intrusion detection. It's not intrusion protection. It's not going to stop intrusion. It's not going to get detected by Comcast or AT&T or anybody else. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to, but it's going to detect and warn you of many kinds of intrusions. Fail to ban. Nice stuff. Pi-hole got mentioned. So a lot of advertising comes through DNS calls. So what we do is we install an app called Pi-hole on here, plug it in, and you make this your default DNS server. All DNS calls will go out here first, out to the net, and then everything that comes back will come back through here, and it filters out ads. I am telling you 80, 90% of my ads that bug the heck out of me are gone as a result of Pi-hole. You want to make a network firewall. Great app out there, OpenWRT-IoT. You want to make a Tor router. I'm not getting into why you might want to do that, but it's there. Hey, here's a really cool thing. We set up a photo frame on here. You can, let me see if I can make this reach. This is a Pi with a 7-inch touchscreen on it. It's the official Raspberry Pi touchscreen, but they make little monitors, 7-inch monitors that plug directly into a Pi. I'm trying to get this thing lined up so you can sort of see it. There we go. Oh, heck, maybe I should touch it and see if it wakes up. There we go. So I can set this up. I have set this up, and some that aren't touchscreens, just dedicated monitors, as a picture frame. So we send that picture frame to grandma, and I can access it. I've set up a router so I can upload new images to it. And if you're not comfortable with that, send out a plain load of images and photos on a micro SD card, micro XD card, and they get regular updates, and really kind of cool. Great program to do that. It's called FEH. Oh, that's something I do. I got a side business. Some of you know. 5 minutes. we rent party gear, everything from lights to PAs and so forth, and projectors and screens. And of course, most people who rent projectors and screens have one purpose or two. They're going to show movies in the clubhouse, or it's going to be a rotating display of images, excuse me, to be shown at an event, a wedding reception, a birthday, a graduation, or whatever. So they'll use their laptop and hook it into my projector, but I offer this service. Say, look, just send me the pictures, give me a flash drive or something like that, and I will put that flash drive into one of these guys and then hook up the output to the projector. And it's small and it's tiny and it doesn't use much power, and it's just cool. These have a lot of commercial use. I've seen them used with a lot of challenges, used in industrial environments and even medical environments, though getting appropriate blessings for that is kind of a challenge. But one of the most popular and common things that you'll ever see these things used in is digital signage. So when you go into that fast food restaurant and they've got digital displays up there that are showing their menu items and they rotate and change, very good chance there's a Raspberry Pi running it. Here in my neighborhood, we have a pool and a tennis court and all those kinds of amenities, and they all have electronic locks that you have to have a pass, a little RFID card that goes into there. And I got into the box when it first got installed, and holy Hannah, it's run by a Raspberry Pi, which is really cool because there is this program that's built into Raspberry Pi, an XD card duplicator. So I don't know if you know this, but SD and XD cards wear out over time. And when they do, there's nothing you can do about it. So every month or two, I go and shut down that system. I run it, pull the XD card out, and make a clone of it. So if and when that happens, I don't have to pay the $400 service charge. I just pop in my new clone and start that process again. That Nextcloud, and so I'm not going to get into hardware stuff, so I got about 3 minutes. But I want to tell you about this one. If you're using Dropbox or one of those things, thank you, Scott. Yes, filter out them ads. They're wonderful. If you use Dropbox and you get the freebie account, you get up to 2.5 gigs. And if you get the commercial account, you get the 100 gigs or terabyte or whatever it is, and you pay that annual fee. Well, there is a Dropbox that is very, 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 very good, available for this. And where'd it go? I had it in my hand. It was sitting here in front of me all day. Oh, there it is. If it was a snake, it would have bit me. So I have it disabled for the people who are sharing it with me right now. They don't have access to it because I brought it in here. Actually, you know what? They will get to it because, no, they won't. All right, I'm trying to figure out how the camera works here. This is called Nextcloud. It's just a Raspberry Pi in a case. And this is my storage device. It's a, oh man, that's not my usual one. I got a bigger one. This is a 64 gig. But with this, you can run your own Dropbox, put a 256 gig USB or connect it to a real external drive, a terabyte drive, a 4 terabyte drive. You set up accounts on it and it works just like Dropbox, and you can specify how much storage everybody gets, and you don't have to pay a monthly fee or any of that stuff. Nextcloud, it's a complicated setup. You want to get a little practice doing other things first, but utterly cool. All right, getting down to the point where it's time to slow things down. I got a lot more things that I can tell you about here. Set up a NAS. Okay, get some external storage device and Google Raspberry Pi NAS. And don't start small, start big, because the experiment isn't worth the time that you have to redo when you say, oh man, this is cool. And now I'm going to do a bigger one. Just do the big one right off the bat. You can't hurt anything. Stand by. Somebody wants to say hi. Everybody calls them Caesar dogs. This is Daisy. She just got a haircut, so she doesn't look like it. Look over here. No, over here, Dum Dum. All right. Close enough. Say bye-bye. It's not Spewy the cat, but it is Barfy the dog. All right. So there's tons more. We turned this into what it was supposed to be. Let me look at the last minute here. We're right on the hour, getting ready to shut down, but let me check if there's anything important that I missed. Command Altair. McDonald's uses Pi on their front screens. Yes, different McDonald's franchisees do, but yes. Yeah, Nextcloud is great. Thank you for dog and friend. All right, so we're going to wind this thing up. A reminder, again, the special is available, 50% off for the super bundles. That's videos, total sims, and total tester, and total tester perhaps. And for just the standalone practice test, the code MMLive626, tomorrow's date. Tomorrow, everything is back to normal. Mike is going to do his AMA. We'll get back to Net Plus, A Plus. And there's more to do if down the road, a month or two, or however long it takes, maybe Mike will let me use the Total Seminars channel and start filling in some of the cool things, the more advanced things. If you have questions about how to do this, how to use it, how to set up that FTP server, maybe use it in a classroom, especially if you're a teacher and you want to do this in a classroom. Total Seminars has Raspberry kits for teachers with lab manuals and setup manuals, and we can work with you on that. You want to talk to Kathy Yale, maybe Scott will put up Kathy's address ever so quick. And that pretty much ends my time. Scott is a stickler for holding us to time. I see that it's 4:01 local time. I thank you all for showing up and letting me work with you. We've had a nice turnout, really appreciate that. And I can't wait to see you again on the regular AMAs and maybe once more for pies. You guys be good. You have a good AMA tomorrow and a good rest of the weekend. We'll see you tomorrow. Michael, if you would cut us off, or whoever's running this control, kill our feed. In the meantime, I won't do the long call, but I'll do the good night. And then I will just sit here and stare at the camera until I see YouTube shut down. Waiting for YouTube to shut down. I'm still watching messages come by, so until we disappear, thank you, Brendan. Do what I can. There's Kathy Yale's address, educational, thank you.